Well, as we get ready for the sermon this morning, I invite you to join me in a word of prayer. Loving God, let the hope and the power of the story of the resurrection of your Son, Jesus Christ, fall gently upon our ears, that it may seep into our hearts where hope is found and where you make of us hope for the world. In Christ's name, amen. Ken Davis tells about a woman looking out her window one day to see her German Shepherd dog with her neighbor's rabbit in its mouth, shaking the life out of it. There was already a bad neighbor relationship going on. This was not going to improve matters any. So she ran out, got the dog to drop the rabbit, picked it up, and realized it was covered in dirt, dog slobber, and absolutely dead. She thought for a moment about what to do, went inside, turned on the shower, started cleaning the dead rabbit in the water, getting all the dirt out, and then she took a hairdryer and started blow drying the rabbit, getting it all dry, fluffed it up really nice, snuck back over to the neighbor's house, opened the door to the rabbit cage, gently put the rabbit in there, shut it, snuck back home. A few hours later, she heard shrieks coming from next door. She ran over and feigned innocence. Is something wrong? The woman said, "It's my rabbit, my rabbit." Something wrong with your rabbit? Yes. 3 days ago it died. I buried it in the backyard and now it's back again. It's hard to ever get tired of a story like that. And anyone familiar with the Easter story, you know it's not about bunnies and rabbits and chocolate eggs. You can appreciate how that humorous story really does capture the experience of the first Easter. Today, we're familiar with Easter. Terms like resurrection are not new to us, whether we believe in it or not. We've heard it before, but if we can relate to the experience of losing something dear to us, a hope, a dream, a person, and you have no expectation whatsoever that that reality is going to change, you understand Easter. In his landmark book, The Resurrection of the Son of God, Bishop N.T. Wright explains how in the first century, no one believed in a bodily resurrection. Not the Greeks, not the Romans, not the Jews. The Greeks, in fact, believed that everything material was bad. The aim is to escape these bodies one day. The Jews had a belief in resurrection, but at the end of time. No one in the first century expected a bodily resurrection within history. So no wonder in the story we heard a moment ago, the Easter story in John's gospel, everybody who experienced an empty tomb did not conclude in any way that Jesus had risen from the dead. Mary Magdalene is the first to reach the tomb early in the morning while it was still dark, according to John. That makes John's Easter story different from the other three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke. They all said it was daylight. It happened at dawn, early in the morning, when light was starting to come up. Only John says it was dark. In John's Gospel, dark is a symbol. It's a symbol of everything that blots out the presence of God. In other words, it is what keeps us from seeing things clearly, from seeing all the evidence. It doesn't mean it was literally dark, but emotionally, spiritually dark. So Mary arrives and sees the stone rolled away. The tomb is empty, but nothing in her caused her to say, Jesus must have risen. After all, he talked enough about it. He told us, he gave us fair warning, I'm going to die. 3 days later, I'm going to rise. Well, it must have happened. No, because it's dark. Her rational ability leads her to the only logical conclusion: somebody stole the body. So she runs to tell two of the disciples, Peter and John, and they run to the tomb to investigate the evidence for themselves. Peter goes in first. He sees the slab of stone where the body of Jesus would have been placed. And then something even more unusual. The burial wrappings of linen cloth wrapped around the body and the head were both taken and neatly folded at the head and the feet on the table. Well, this seems really odd to Peter. If somebody stole a body, why in the world are they going to take the time to unwrap the burial cloths and then fold them up neatly? You get the idea when Peter leaves the tomb that he's just scratching his head. I don't know what to make of this. Now, John goes in, sees the same evidence, but the story says he saw and believed. Now, you got to remember, John wrote this gospel. He's probably patting himself on the back a little bit. Peter, yeah, he's kind of thick. He didn't get it, but I did. I walked out. I saw. I believed. Even John, though, says that when he and Peter left the tomb, they still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Whatever John believed, it wasn't resurrection. So that leaves Mary standing at the tomb, and the next verse is what stands out to me this year. I say this year because this is my 36th Easter sermon today. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. In all honesty, it's only felt like 72 or so. Probably 20 of the times I've preached the Easter story, it's been from the Gospel of John, and this year I did what I always do. I go back to the same commentaries I've had since seminary. I look at the same sources I've always studied. I try to bring some new ones in, but I do this study, and as I do it, something always stands out that I've just never paid attention to before. It's this next verse that grabbed me this year. But Mary stood outside the tomb weeping. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb. What stood out to me about that is Mary did not run away from her grief. She didn't go back with Peter and John, return home, try to get back to life. She didn't hide her grief. She didn't bury it down. She didn't pretend it wasn't there. She did a brave thing. She stood in front of the source of her grief and she lingered there. And because she did, she became the first person to experience Easter. She bent down to look in the tomb and she saw something Peter nor John saw, two angels sitting in the tomb. Now, why that did not scare her to death, I have no idea. Maybe the angels look like ordinary people, but then you got to wrestle with the fact that what are two ordinary people doing sitting in a tomb at twilight? They say to Mary, "Woman, why are you weeping?" Now, for us who know the story, the answer seems obvious, doesn't it? Her Lord is dead. Let's pause for a moment and think about who Mary Magdalene was. There's a tradition that says she was a prostitute. That is because of Pope Gregory the Great all the way back in the 7th century. Pope Gregory said that Mary Magdalene is the same woman as the woman in another story, a woman who anointed Jesus and dried his feet with her hair. That story says she was a sinful woman. People came to conclude she must have been a prostitute. But that story does not tell us her name. Pope Gregory said, "Oh, that's Mary Magdalene." And so this whole tradition evolved that said, yes, Mary Magdalene at the tomb, she was a prostitute. Only problem is, none of that's true. In another part of Luke's gospel, he tells us who Mary Magdalene was. The 12 disciples went with Jesus, and so did some women who had been healed of evil spirits and diseases. Mary, who was called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had been driven out. Mary wasn't a prostitute, she was plagued. Demons, evil spirits in the ancient world were used to describe maladies nobody understood, especially emotional and mental disturbances. Chances are Mary suffered from some kind of mental illness, something that made people say, she's got a demon. Watch out for her, she's got problems. Now, if you've ever had anybody say that about you, or someone you love, you know the added emotional turmoil that can bring to a person. But Jesus did not treat Mary that way. Somewhere along her life history, she met Jesus, who treated her as a person, who saw her potential, who gave her understanding, who healed her, who returned her to life, who gave her hope. Why are you crying, Mary? Is it not obvious? This one who did this for her is now gone. Except Jesus died 2 days before this. His death was not immediately fresh. And the Easter story does not tell us that when Mary first got to the tomb that she was weeping. There's something more that has caused her tears. What is it? Actually, Mary tells us herself. She answered the angels, "They have taken my Lord away, and I do not know where they have put him." Jesus' death was bad enough, but now Mary is deprived of the only source of comfort she had left, at least having the body of Jesus in this tomb so that she could come and be near him and remember what God had once done for her. If Mary's prayer could have been answered that day, then the body of Jesus would have been discovered and brought back to the tomb. He would have remained dead, but that would have been enough probably to stop Mary's tears. It would have been okay with her. And what a shame that would have been. What a shame it would have been if God had answered her prayer. Because she would not have discovered the even better answer that God gave her over the one that she wanted. While she wept. While she wept, God was giving her a source of hope she had yet to experience. Anybody here weeping right now? Shed any tears lately? Maybe something in your life that has changed, maybe a loss. Maybe you weep for what's going on in our world. While you weep, it's important to know that God is up to things we don't always see in real time. God is moving, and we will discover. So Mary begins to discover some things. She turns now and sees Jesus, but her mind can't yet comprehend that Jesus could be alive. She thinks he must be the gardener. Again, her rational ability kicking in. Jesus says the same thing to Mary the angels did. Why are you weeping? But before she can answer, Jesus asks another question. Who is it you're looking for? Oh, there's a question. That is a question that will take you places. She was looking for her Lord, but not a living Lord. She was looking for a limited Lord. She was looking for a Lord limited by death, limited to the ways in which she had experienced God's activity in her life. She wasn't looking for more than that. She wasn't looking for God to do something she had never experienced. And of course, God is always moving on. God is always doing the new. God is always living beyond. David Owen was an associate pastor here at St. Luke's a number of years ago. He went on to lead as a senior pastor some of our largest churches in the conference. He died a few years ago, and his family and friends took a collection of his sermons and they published them in a book. And about a year ago, when the book came out, I referenced one of those sermons in a sermon here one day. The title of it is, Jesus is Not Where You Last Saw Him. He talks about the angels at the tomb, and he thinks about the Luke version of the Easter story where the angels say to the women, he is not here, he is risen. And he takes that statement, he is not here, and he paraphrases it and says, what it means is, Jesus is not where you last saw him. Listen to the opening sentences of that sermon. Religious people are always in danger of getting stuck, convinced that the past is holy, they may try to live there. Having glimpsed a partial truth, they may decide that it's the whole truth. Believing that God is eternal, they may imagine that God's will is unchanging. Having memorized ancient insights, they may drive toward the future with their only peephole being a rearview mirror. Certain of God's whereabouts yesterday, they may be blind to God's whereabouts today. And then he brings that thought current. He talks about the discrimination toward gay people, the subjugation of women, racial injustice, mistreatment of immigrants. And he says most of these things have been done by Christians who justify the behavior by ancient scriptures they read, and because they believe that was God's revelation at one point, it means it's God's revelation for all points. But God isn't limited to a moment in history. God breaks free from any limitation. God is always moving on, living on. What a question. Who are you looking for? Who are you looking for today? Who is the God you're looking for? Is it a God who's always going to keep things the way they've always been? Or is it a God who's always got something new to teach us and to show us? Well, Mary is now very ready for a breakthrough. Jesus calls her by name, Mary, and now she can see. Now all of a sudden it's daylight. It's reminiscent of what Jesus said earlier in the gospel, that the good shepherd calls his sheep by name and they know his voice. Well, now Mary's experiencing this. He has called her name and she sees that it's Jesus, and she responds Rabboni, which is a variation of the title rabbi, teacher, except this is more personal. It's like saying my teacher, and the emphasis is on the relationship. We're getting now, folks, to the meat of the matter when it comes to Easter. We're getting to the heart of what Easter is all about. That it's about a relationship with a risen Lord. Easter is not about a doctrine of resurrection. It's not about some idea that we should ponder and think about, and how did it happen? And go, I don't know if I can believe that or not. That's to miss the point of Easter. If you think about it, none of the Gospels tell us how it happened. None of them try to explain resurrection. They all just tell us about ordinary people who met a risen Lord. That's all the evidence there is. And for some reason, this Christian faith business is still around. Maybe that's why Mary must have tried to grab hold of Jesus, because of what he says to her next. He says, do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. It seems rather cold. Why would Jesus say that? Well, again, the people who kind of keep the faith up here in the head, they try to make sense of it all. They say, the reason is God hadn't quite stitched Jesus back together just yet. You know, he'd had enough time to start decomposing, and things weren't like they should be. She didn't need to, come on. In the very next story, Jesus is going to say to Thomas, you don't believe me? Well, then come and put your hands in the nail prints. Come and put your finger where they stuck the spear in my side. Come and touch me. Now, why does Jesus tell Mary, don't hold me? Tim Keller says it's stronger than that. The word means don't cling to me. Can't you imagine why? With everything I shared about Mary so far, can't you imagine in that moment when she realizes he is alive, that she would want to wrap her arms around him and say, I am never letting go of you again. You are not leaving my sight. You are my only source of hope in this world. You're going to stay right. No. Don't do that. I can't be limited to one little moment. If you'll let go of me and let me ascend to God, Mary, you will understand that I'm going to be more available to you than I've ever been. I'm going to be more real to you than you've ever known. I didn't come just to keep people in their own private bubble of comfort. I didn't come to protect people from the hardships of life and this world and keep their lives comfortable. Yes, I came to live in them, but even more, I came to live through them. Look at what Jesus says next. Do not hold me, but go to my brothers and say to them, I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. He gives Mary a mission. Go and tell. There's a seminary dean who told one of the students one day he was going to preach in the next chapel service. The student had never preached a sermon in his life. It scared him to death. He started studying the commentaries and the books, praying for wisdom. Nothing came. He got up before the students the day he was to give the sermon and he said, do you all know what I have to tell you today? And they all went, no. He said, neither do I. Go in peace. The dean came to him after the service. He said, I'm not amused. You're going to preach at the next chapel service, and this time you better have a sermon. He went to work again. He kept praying. Nothing came. He stood before the students and said, do you all know what I have to say to you today? This time they all went, yes. So he said, well, good. Then you already know I don't have to tell you. Go in peace. This time the dean said, look, I'm giving you one more shot. If you don't come up with a sermon, I'm going to have to dismiss you. Next chapel service, still no sermon. He got up before the student body. Do you all know what I have to tell you? Some of them went, yeah. Some of them went, no. He said, okay then, the ones who know, go tell the ones who don't know, go in peace. The dean came up to him after the service. The ones who know, go tell the ones who don't. You finally preached today. The ones who know, go tell the ones who don't know. What do you know? What do you know? I believe there's value in the Easter story for people who do not believe and have never heard of the truth of the resurrection. But honestly, I believe there's more value for people who have and who already believe it. Because sometimes we forget to go and tell what we know. In fact, it's tougher than that. The world already knows what we've got to say, don't they? The world has heard it before. Oh, yeah, resurrection business. Oh, yeah, Christianity. I don't need to hear it. They know what we've got to tell. What they have not seen enough is us showing what we know. Us expressing by the way we live, by the words we use, the hope that's in our hearts. And Easter becomes so powerful within us, we just cannot hold it inside. We've got to give it away. That's what the world needs right now. And when you do this Christian faith business long enough, we all find we need it ourselves. And there comes the time when we wonder, is it really real? Where did God go? And the way you find him again is when you go and share. Let me close with this. A few weeks ago, it was a Friday afternoon. Remember Friday? Not good things happened on Friday in the scripture story. The people at the front desk came and said, Rob, there's a man up front who said he wants to see a pastor. The other pastors were gone at the moment, so I went up to talk to him. He is from Haiti, and he speaks very little English. His native language, of course, is Creole. The only people I know who speak Creole are Dave and Jamelyn Williamson. They weren't around to help me. But his second language is Spanish. So I called for my assistant, Marcia Thompson, to come out because she speaks fluent Spanish. She began to translate. I learned that he was a professional soccer player. He and his wife, their 2 small children, had been living in Chile where he was playing soccer, but the conditions were really rough and really horrible. And they had this belief, if we could just get to America, things might be better. So they came here, ended up in Indianapolis. He got a job for a man who was Mexican, but then all of a sudden, the man was either deported or he was about to be deported, and he left for Mexico. Well, now this guy's out of a job. His wife is also expecting their 3rd child any day, and he's about to be evicted from his apartment. And he doesn't have any money to pay the rent. He doesn't know what he's going to do. He can't feed the family. I called for a couple of our other staff people, Susan Peters and Samantha Isaacs, who are just incredible. They began to talk about our rent assistance program. They got the paperwork started. When they walked away, as my assistant Marcia and I were sitting there with them, this guy just fell apart. Just started crying. And my assistant put her hand on his shoulder and began to speak to him in Spanish. We believe here in a God of hope. We believe in a God who is helping us all the time, even when we can't see it at the time. And let me tell you, I know that God is with you right now. Now, you need to know that my assistant Marcia's husband had died just a couple of months before that. Happened very unexpectedly. And I was watching her minister to this young man, and I knew where those words were coming from. When they came out and we got his rent assistance taken care of, I asked Marcia to please tell him I'm going to drive him back to his apartment, and I'm going to stop by the grocery store on the way. So we got in the car, went to Kroger, went inside, I got a cart, and I just pointed, said, let's get what you need. We went, and he got like 1 or 2 vegetables and a piece of fruit. I'm like, dude, come on, man. I go and scrape it all up, and I dump it in the cart, and I get every apple and banana they've got and dump it in the cart. We go down the cereal aisle. He gets 1 box of cereal. I said, your kids are going to eat that before tonight's over. Let's get some cereal here. Dump the cereal. He is looking at like, I've never seen it. His eyes are getting big. And his tears are gone now. And he's starting to smile. And finally, he can't take it anymore. It's like, I've never seen it. Oh, no, Pastor, check out. We go, we check out, put the food in the car. As we are driving to his apartment, he uses his best English to say, my kids say, Daddy, when can we eat? And I never know what to say. Tonight, I have an answer. And there's this transformation that's happened like Mary at the tomb. And we get to his apartment and we start taking the food in, but he's got to go get his wife and the kids to come down and meet me. And he is so excited. And we get all the food loaded in there. I get in the car, put it in gear, ready to leave and come back to the church when all of a sudden the passenger door swings open. And this man jumps into my car. And he doesn't say a word. He just gets the seatbelt and straps himself in. And I look over and realize it's Jesus. He never said anything. I just keep driving. I get through a couple of stoplights coming back to the church, and I just can't take it anymore. I said, is something wrong? And Jesus looked at me with this big grin. He said, no. I just wanted to say, I think we ought to do this more often. The best Easter sermon is the one Jesus preached. He said to Mary, go and tell. And when she did, she said, I have seen the Lord.